bear in mind the government people are not there to do whatever they think is right and wrong. They've got to know what the public is thinking.
And public access television is one of the best ways to get government officials to hear what we the people are thinking. Too bad it's being taken away from us. You'll hear the way our public officials are eagerly working with the telecom and cable companies to destroy public access television across the country. Next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this part 2 of our 4-part series about the demise of public access television in America. There are many benefits of public access television, and here are a series of comments starting with Vin DeBona, who is the world-famous creator and executive producer of America's Funniest Home Videos.
Public access really is the only venue for training, for forums on discussion on both sides of an issue that evolve and are not just a 25-second soundbite on the local news at 6 o'clock at night. It's the only way people can get ideas and training of young new people to learn the business.
I got my training on how to produce public access television here at DCTV, and I got studio training, editing training, directing, field training, and everything you need basically to put a show together.
And a lot of the kids now want to come to public access to make their dream a reality, those who want to be in the entertainment field.
And as a volunteer, I was a student intern when I was going to college. And it was a wonderful way to get actual hands-on experience working in an actual television studio, which is something that was very difficult to do, something that was actually going to be cablecast, that was going to be on the air, so to speak. And it was really a tremendous opportunity to get a chance to work in a studio setting like that.
Former public access coordinator Art Poma found some people who started in public access discovered a career in the industry of video communications.
A lot of times people would come and do one show, and that would just get the spark going, and they would end up putting making their own studio and doing show after show after show and just loving it and having a library full of tapes and DVDs to bring in to show, and it was something that I could be proud of for them, you know, to see the feeling that they had for their show, and music shows and discussion shows. It's just amazing the things I've seen come through public access.
Public access allowed people to hone their skills, but it also provided a need. You would do shows that were, like I said, very community-oriented, dealing with issues, dealing with local police, dealing with local, you know, the fire department would come in and do public service announcements, things of that nature that would reach out to the local community. Yet at the same time, you were teaching student interns how to work in television production. You had people trying to hone their skills because, like I said, this is LA, where everyone comes to try and get into the entertainment industry. And maybe that doesn't sound like a real serious need, but you know, it's nice that people have a chance to have a testing ground to come out, and at least they have a chance. Maybe they're not going to make it, but at least they have a chance to showcase some of their talents.
To Councilman Bill Rosendahl, public access provided an even more important function than training people for a career. Public access provided training for Americans to be better citizens, something he thinks is now sadly lacking.
You know, America is supposed to be a democracy, okay? We are the least educated, aware democracy on the planet. You can go all over the world where there's a democracy. They have channels dedicated to real public affairs programming. They have real debates and stuff. So their democracy people are a lot more aware of issues. I don't know why Americans are given the least amount. It's all soundbite journalism, all bleed if it leads, got to go to the break for a commercial.
Some people disparage public access as an irrelevant or obnoxious because of the unusual programming that has been aired. Producer Robert Sharetta understands that although sometimes there are exotic programs on the channels, there is much more substantial programming available.
What really drives me crazy about that is the fact that here you've got a couple producers. I know of one very well, Leslie Dutton and company, who produced something called Full Disclosure out there. One of the best programs, not just in Los Angeles, not just in California, but maybe nationwide, for uncovering some of the corruption and problems that occur with local government and agencies that should be running themselves more efficiently and more honestly, certainly. We could do the same here in Washington. And let me say this. You know, for 20 years when I was working in New York, people would tell me about the corruption in Washington, and I kept saying, well, send me some articles. And they said, well, they cover it from time to time, but probably not as aggressively as they could. I think Washington suffered those years from not having more people expose the corruption that took place in the local government, as well as, of course, the federal and state governments that always have their share.
Working for 29 years in public access television gave Art Poma a worldview of the role performed by public access.
Most important role that it serves is to help the community and to reflect the community, because I felt that in my job, people were looking for some way to connect with their neighbors. And there was no way to do that in reality other than having their TV show on, which would be a good way for them to tell their friends and say, you know, I'm on TV. You want to see me? I'm on TV. And it was exciting for people.
There's something about public access that's special, at least to me. I just love the environment of public access. I love I used to call it the MASH of television production, because it was like meatball surgery. We'd do 5 shows a day there, and you just like bring them in, bring them out, do your best, try and make it look professional. And there was a great challenge in that, you know. And oftentimes you were with a very skeletal crew. Sometimes just yourself, but it was a lot of fun to take that environment and know you're doing something in the community and still making it look fairly professional, considering you don't have all, like I said, all the bells and whistles that a lot of the big boys have.
But even the big boys appreciate what public access television provided.
You have young, old, you have transformance of ideas, and a perfect place to learn. It's the best thing in television.
And now it's going away. We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll hear about the insidious way our government officials are conspiring to get rid of public access television. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in part 2 of our 4-part series on saving public access television in America. Producer Elaine Alston knows from personal experience the social benefits that come from public access television.
I've received so many wonderful comments and feedback from teachers, from students, from aunts and uncles and grandparents who have saw the show, and they really love the show, and they've called and they want to have their kids to be a part of this show, and they think that it's wonderful that we're showing something positive for our young people.
Producer Bill Schickler uses public access television to make a difference in our society.
Our program, we try to get people to lobby Congress and local officials. And cost-wise, public access TV is free to the public, more or less. And you can reach, I've heard people, the stations I'm on, say that it reaches about 3.5 million people. Now, if I were to have a copying machine and try to make 3.5 million leaflets for all the people who see the show, it would cost me a lot of money. I don't have a lot of money. And so this is a way to reach members of the community. And I think we've been pretty successful in that.
You know, without public access, Felicia, we couldn't have gotten our program started. The fact of the matter is, a program like ours, as fascinating as we think it is, it's a narrow segment of the population is probably interested in us initially, and we had to convince an awful lot of broadcasters and station managers that we should be on the air. Once we got started with public access here in the Washington area, we eventually blossomed out so that we're now an independent production on the air in literally 62 stations across the U.S., all kinds of commercial stations, cable television largely, and public access stations here in the Washington area that we stay loyal to, because frankly speaking, I'm never going to forget that they gave us our start, and for that reason we're going to insist that we stay on the air in these public access stations.
We asked Art Poma to describe the people who came to public access with the intent to create or air a program they produced.
I would say most were ordinary people that had a message. There were the ones that were avant-garde, and they were usually people that just had wanted a niche, and that was their niche. And so certainly I would find time to play them as long as they followed the guidelines set by the cable company. No swearing, no nudity. There were times where those shows would work.
Producer Jocelyn Lawrence uses her program, More Room on the Outside, to enlighten viewers about topics ignored by the mainstream media.
Because mainstream media, a lot of these things don't get covered during mainstream media. So it is important that I network with conscious-minded people and work together to make our own network that will get our messages out.
Stanley Scheinbaum is concerned about the demise of the mainstream media. He points out that they aren't serving their most important role as a government watchdog.
The Chicago Tribune, which suddenly has a big hand in the LA Times, less interested in the principled existence of the press as they once were. They're more interested in selling advertising and so forth.
Rob Ransom is a businessman and was interviewed on Elaine Alston's program Dreams. As a result of his exposure on the program, he became an advocate for public access television for a variety of reasons.
I think it's important to keep public access TV alive. One, because it's a low cost, almost no cost to the community as far as getting exposure, as far as getting experience in the film business. I think there are quite a few people that come in that might not necessarily be able to afford being taught or going to classes and learning how to produce or how to edit various aspects of the film business.
A lot of people don't focus on young people, but here at DC, they seem to love young people. I know they have this program in the summer where they work with young people and they teach them how to be camera people, producers, and field technicians. And I don't know if anybody else is doing it, but I know they're doing it. And that's really wonderful. And that's inspiring our young people to go forth and continue in this field.
Mr. Ransom realizes public access television can also help advertise and support businesses who are philanthropically involved in community activities.
It's important for us so that we can have a low-cost channel that exposes our businesses, our community, our nonprofit organizations, all the programs that are run to help kids, seniors, and various other aspects of the community.
But Mr. Scheinbaum is most concerned about civic activism. People need to be informed, and in viewing the decline of the mainstream media, that is the greatest role of public access television.
In order to be an educated public, the people, if you don't mind my saying so, who vote, and they're voting in a democratic system, you want them voting for the people who have the interests of the public at heart, not just their own careers. Now, one thing I'm particularly worried about at the moment is there is increasing attention to the fact that the newspapers are no longer being as astute and conscious of the First Amendment issues, or even in their conscious of their role in keeping the public informed. And to repeat, the public, if they are to vote properly, have to be kept informed. So public access is critical.
That's what local origination and public access offered, were people's opportunity to express themselves without, we have to go to a commercial now, or 2 minutes of something, a minute of commercials, 3 minutes of something. I mean, right now it's just terribly polluted.
Commercial television is controlled by commercial sponsors. Public access television isn't fettered by any financial constraints. If we lose public access television, we will only have commercial programming to inform the people.
The threat of closing down public access stations would not only affect us, but much more worrisome to me would be the effect and impact it would have on future producers. Because programs like ours, International Investor, would have never gotten started, never got off the ground, never survived the early years especially, if it wasn't for public access supporting us in every way possible with equipment, facilities, and people, and knowledge that is so important for people like myself that were really coming from a Wall Street background but a complete novice to television production. Even though I worked on Wall Street for almost 2 decades, the fact is we recognized early on that someone had to speak separate and apart from the corporate networks that now seem to be supporting only the Wall Street voices, or conversely, those that just listen to what our congressional and political leaders have to say.
James Cavendish gives an example of what he could never do on commercial television.
Like, take for instance, one time I called the NAACP the Klan with the tan. Now, if I'd have said that on regular TV or regular radio, where I had sponsors, you would have heard all kinds of criticism.
Councilman Rosendahl gives another example of how sponsors can control content on commercial television.
If you're a drug company and you have all your great new drugs, and all that pretty music about your drugs, the last thing you're going to want to have on that show is something that conflicts with what your product is. And that happens in practically every part of it. The advertisers have a huge impact on the content, okay? And the owners of whatever the product creation is, they want that money. And they might not have to be told you can't do this or that. They just want your money, babe. And if you can do a 30-second commercial or a minute commercial, we'll take it.
We think it's vitally important that not just our program, but other producers come along that are offering other voices that really are not so much against what those entities have to offer, but really come up with some new and interesting ideas that they're not currently presenting because they have no reason compelling them to do so.
Patsy Robles, who runs public access in San Antonio, Texas, has seen what has happened to public access television in her city.
I want this to really serve as a warning to other cities so that they can prevent that from happening to them and their studio-less, as soon as their cable franchising agreement ends.
Actor Ed Asner is more graphic in his depiction of the demise of public access television.
The access of the citizen to inform his fellows has come to zilch.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it,
Go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you, weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in Part 2 of our 4-part series on saving public access television. Ron Cooper, the Executive Director of Access Sacramento, describes what the Digital Infrastructure and Video Competition Act of 2006 did in California.
From a public education and government access point of view, the DIVCA law permitted cable companies to stop providing anything above the 5% franchise fees in many areas, particularly in the urban areas of the city of Los Angeles and the city and county of San Francisco. And what that's meant is that in communities where cable companies were in fact providing training, studios, facilities, and staff for public access in particular, the cable companies have stopped providing those services. And the city of Los Angeles, the city council has decided that it would not continue what the cable company was providing.
Art Poma witnessed firsthand the demise of the Los Angeles Public Access Television.
I worked for the cable company 29 years, and I remember when the public access first started, buying microphones and setting things up, and then I saw the studio come and go. That got taken away from us. And then I saw we had many people working, putting the tapes in and pressing play and stop, pressing the button to put it on live. Then I saw that go away because we went automated. And then when I knew our time was coming up for the 2009, January of 2009, I thought, well, I don't think they're going to get rid of public access because it's just one person handling everything. And all it is a channel which we don't even run 24 hours a day. And so I thought, well, they'll probably keep it on to be nice to the community and the people. But when it got close, they said, that's it, no more public access.
Patsy Robles tells the sad story of San Antonio.
Any producer that was producing before 2005, when previously we had a staff who was there at the studio to help with the filming. They would actually do the editing, they'd add the titles in, they would do everything. The only thing we had to worry about was content.
Ed Asner is concerned about the political machinations that are responsible for the demise of public access television.
Well, it demonstrates, once again, the clampdown on free speech and thought and press in this country. We are ruled in this country by a media that is generally of one voice, that is, there are something like 6 or 7 mega companies which control media in our country, perhaps the world. This is merely a further inroad into that control, so that any thought that appears is due to these 6 or 7 mega corporations. Been going on that I know of since the 70s, and this is one of the last efforts to wrap up the inability for the private citizen to make his thoughts known, to expose ideas that you will not see on public TV, that you will not see in corporate TV.
So we have gone from a staff of 14 people at the studios we formerly had in 2005 and prior to that to assist the producers to one person. There is one coordinator for the entire city of San Antonio, who has a population of over 1 million people. We have at least 150 producers. There's now one coordinator.
Little by little, public access just kept getting robbed. And I remember one of my managers saying that we had air conditioning problems or something, I don't remember. well, what do you think this is? NBC? And I thought, well, it may not be NBC to you, but to the people that care about their shows, it is NBC. You know, it is their only way to get on TV. They'll never be on NBC.
The people working in public access were shocked by the closure of the studios.
We were definitely devastated. We really all loved what we did, and we felt like we were a part of the community. We were involved with what was happening in our area, and even though we did have a heads up, we had fair warning that it was going to happen, you still kind of hope for that 11th hour savior, but that never happened. So yeah, we definitely miss what we did. We all, to a man, every one of us and woman, loved what we did there.
But basically, we lost all the staffing, we lost the facilities, and of course, there was just a total dismay and outrage when that happened because all these people lost their jobs. And I think the sad part about it is that there is money coming in. That money is still being paid to the city, but they're not using it the way we feel it should be used to benefit the entire community. So everybody was hurt by this.
According to Councilman Rosendahl, this should have never happened.
But technically, our city can do nothing about it now. That power was taken away from the city when the state took over. I want to make sure that public access doesn't have a shared channel with Channel 36, but gets one of those 4 channels that are interconnected citywide, and we want it interconnected so that public access has a soft landing place within the mix of our channels. The whole thing is terrible, the way it presently is. And I'm afraid to tell you, unless there's an uprising among the people, it's going to stay the way it is now.
Without public access, I could have not done this. Without the qualified staff, the love and attention, and even when I mess up, they're still there, you know, saying, it's okay, take your time, calm down. But I'm so excited about making my dream a reality. But without public access, my dream would never become a reality.
Perhaps executive producer Vin DeBona said it best.
Public access is an ombudsman for the community. We have to have that. It's very important.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Do you think that public access television serves a valuable purpose in your community? Please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and tell us what you think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us for part 3 of this series. We'll show you what the people in Los Angeles are doing to restore public access television in the media capital of the nation. That's coming up in the next edition of Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
Is the city legally obligated by federal or state law to carry out PEG access?
Good morning, Marie McTeague from the City Attorney's Office, and the answer is no.
Okay, so we're not obligated by law?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
And thus the City of Los Angeles has washed their hands of public access television. But the people of LA aren't content with losing their public voice. You'll hear what the movers and shakers of Hollywood are doing to restore public access television next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this part 3 of our 4-part series about the fight to save public access television in America. In the city of Los Angeles, the media capital of the world, the city council has refused to use the franchise fees paid by subscribers to fund public access television. Steve Krieger was a staff employee in a public access studio and explains what employees knew of the access funding situation.
We knew technically public access was somehow supposed to exist, but from everything that we knew it was going to be one of those catch-22s about how that was possible. I believe they were supposed to be able to provide equipment, but absolutely no money or mention of any staff to supervise this equipment or how people would get access to it. So things like that were a little convoluted, and you didn't know how that was going to get ironed out, if it was going to get ironed out.
Mr. Krieger was pretty accurate in his description. Ron Cooper, the executive director of Access Sacramento, gives us a little more detail.
In the city of Los Angeles, the city council made no mention of this 1%, allowed Time Warner to walk away from 14 studios, told the public when asked that the city had no plans of taking over and had no money because of DIVCA, not mentioning the possibility of the 1%. And now the controversy continues, and the question is, what will the 1%, which in the franchise area of the city of Los Angeles is $5 million a year. That 1% is a lot of money.
Knowing this, that approximately $5 million earmarked for public access was being gobbled up every year by the city council, the Los Angeles citizens and public access producers hurried to the city council meeting when the issue of public access was put on the agenda.
President Garcetti and council members, my name is Vin DeBona. I am executive producer of America's Funniest Home Videos, a 35-year producer-director in television.
There is a need for public access. The 14 stations in several disadvantaged communities will no longer be provided. Hands-on internships.
I produce a program that is dealing with health and healing. I've had many people to call me after seeing the show and not just complimenting me, but pursuing further the information that I was able to provide.
We've been on the air for 10 years. We just celebrated our 515th show on the air. We've had everybody from De La Hoya to Pacquiao, Tyson yelling at me, all sorts of people, Don King, you name it.
We have been able to get the arts, Shepherd of the Hills, Reverend Dudley on the show, other people in the community, to bring this harmonization of different people, different cultures.
It's been 12 years, and I'd like for it to continue. We volunteer our time and talents for free.
Hi, my name is Charlie Mount. I'm the general manager for Classic Arts Showcase, which is a show seen on over 600 access channels across the country.
Council members, a couple of years ago on my public access show, I had the president of the Los Angeles Alliance for Elephants, and we covered the previous issue quite extensively. It is unfortunate that some of the council members who championed that effort didn't see the importance of preserving our First Amendment rights and public access to remain in chambers rather than go and rub elbows and take photographs with movie stars.
Los Angeles City Councilman Bill Rosendahl took up the issue of funding. He questioned the officials from the Information Technology Agency, which is responsible for all of the electronic communications within Los Angeles.
How is the current PEG access system in the city funded? Do monies come from franchise fees to support PEG access in general?
Councilman, there's two sources of funding. The 5% fund.
Hold my time, please.
The 5% franchise fee fund, which was already in place prior to the state franchise, and that is approximately $25 million. Of that amount, 60% goes to the general fund, which is approximately $15 million, and 40% goes for the operation of PEG. In addition, on top of that, as we've discussed, the new 1% fund is approximately $5 million, and that is limited to capital expenditures only.
So every year, the city receives $25 million from the cable franchise fees, sweeping up $15 million into the city's general fund, which leaves $10 million for public, educational, and government television. Then there's a new 1%, or $5 million, available for public access equipment and facilities. And yet there are no operating public access studios in Los Angeles.
Okay, let me ask you the real question of the moment, okay? 60% of the franchise fee is going to the general treasury.
That's correct.
It's not going to anything to do with the cable or anything else.
That's
okay.
right.
Then there's 40% left. Is there money in that 40%, if the city didn't sweep it into the general fund, that could be used for public access?
Councilman, the answer to that question is yes. There is an additional money that is generally available and earmarked at the end of the year that reverts back to the general fund for paying for city services.
Okay.
So the unused and unbudgeted 40%, plus the unused and unbudgeted 1%, which could easily total $5 million, automatically gets swept up into the city's general fund. Finance Chairman Bernard Parks defended this unilateral confiscation of funds in an attempt to resolve the city's horrendous deficit.
That $3.8 million, that's money that was approved by the council during last year's budget process for the 08-09 budget, which is now $60 million in the hole. And so if you are talking about removing almost $4 million and creating a $65 to $70 million deficit, that's what is being offered. It's not being swept at this point in time. It was a part of the entire budget deliberations that we agreed on that came effective July 1st of this year. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware. We'll go back and look at it in the committee, but this money is part of a deficit that currently exists.
So the Los Angeles City Council developed their budget counting on having this money, which is by law supposed to be held in a public trust fund exclusively to provide public access television channels and studios. Concerned citizens tried to make this point clear to the council members.
And it was revealed that the City of Los Angeles is already getting $25 million as part of the franchise fee. That has not changed.
A couple questions that I have to ask you. I said, one, the public needs to know where the $25 million in cable franchise fees are going. Has it gone into a sludge fund?
Of that amount, $15 million goes into the general fund, which is relatively approximately 60%. 40% goes into, initially goes into the information and technology to fund the current system. However, at the end of the year, all those funds aren't used. They're returned to the general fund.
The subscribers are still paying for the 14 in the public access channels. And there's just one, and it's not ours. It's your government channel. And is the city and ITA going to give us a refund for those lost channels?
The cost analysis from the information and technology would be that it would be between $6 and $8 million a year to establish public access studios, staff, and equipment. Well, if they're already keeping $10 million a year as part of that 40%, and now with the additional influx of $5 million more per year from Time Warner, that's $15 million a year. That's almost double than what it would take in order to create a system where we had and we're able to maintain true public access.
And you know, I have to say something that the city's disinclination to share this wealth for 25 years, it sounds almost criminal to me. It is tremendously punitive, and it's foul smelling. that this city, which has become vastly more progressive than when I first came here, should be behaving in such a manner in terms of denying free speech and thought.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and Part 3 of our 4-part series on saving public access television in America. The dissolution of the cable franchise arrangements with the cities came about due to political pressure from the telecom companies. Councilman Rosendahl brought the issue up at the LA City Council meeting.
Now that AT&T is in the business and Verizon, which is what it was all about, I am very upset that AT&T has 4,000 customers in this city and not one has a channel 35, the government channel, or channel 36. I think they're violating the law, and you better go after AT&T on that one. But that's not the issue today. The issue today is public access.
In an attempt to force the City Council to reveal what they were doing with their new revenue stream from the telecoms, Full Disclosure testified before the Information Technology Agency Committee. I was quite surprised to learn about the items before this committee today, in particular with regards to the UVerse system proposed by AT&T. We have not been provided or are not aware of what the circumstances are with regards to the prices change. But it has been called to our attention due to the committee's report that there is a whole new stream of funding coming to the city from AT&T. Is specifically 1% of the AT&T's gross revenues. Considering that Time Warner's gross revenues of 1% is about $25 million, it would appear that that they're going to be providing at least that and maybe more from AT&T, which is quite a windfall that I think the public have been led to believe was not in the horizon. Here we're sitting here without our community cable channels. I would like to know if we're expecting this kind of a huge multi-million-dollar windfall to come from Verizon. Is AT&T the only one, or are we expecting another multi-million-dollar windfall? Councilman Rosendahl explained what AT&T is doing.
AT&T is hustling into this video business. They don't want to put channel 35 and 36 on an analog channel. They want you to go to channel something or another, then flip through da-da-da-da to find it. And you know, so far they've gotten away with it. We're suing them. And why does it matter to them? Well, then they'd have to do this all over the country, you know, put the channel in the right spot with everybody else. They don't want to do it. And AT&T is like, you know, motherhood in America. It's got more power than the three of us would ever dream of having. And unfortunately, politicians buckle to that. Fortunately, our council didn't buckle to them.
Ron Cooper explained the statewide politics of the AT&T effort.
So the idea was that AT&T and other phone companies would be able to come in at the state level with a statewide franchise, select any geographic area anywhere in California to serve with their fashion of cable television, and be able to move quickly, thus promoting greater competition for the incumbent cable companies. And the idea of the act, the Video Competition Act, was that by permitting this to occur quickly, that it would be competition with cable television rates, that the rates offered by the telcos would be less, and therefore all rates would drop in a competitive race for the various viewers. What's happened now in the last 2.5 years is that has not happened.
The phone companies wanted to get into the video business. So over a 10-year period, they upgraded all of their wires. They put fiber here and fiber there, and then they went up to Sacramento just like the insurance companies go to Washington on health care, and lobbied and lobbied and lobbied and lobbied, where Sacramento said, well, we understand your point. Their whole argument was they didn't want to go city by city, county by county, go in there, hat in hand, get a franchise, have to do all this give back to community, and so on and so forth. They went up to Sacramento and said, look, competition is important. These cable people have a monopoly. Yeah, but others would say, well, satellite is already there. People have a choice with satellite. Well, they kept pushing the argument that if you really want competition, you really want lower costs, you really want better service, you got to let us into their business, which is BS to me, to be honest with you. It was just they wanted to get around all the cities, all the counties. They didn't really want to give this away and that away. So they cut a deal with Sacramento.
The result of that deal was the Digital Infrastructure and Video Competition Act of 2006 in California, or otherwise known as DIVCA. Councilman Rosendahl is pressing the telecoms to provide at least some access. Interestingly, his focus seems to favor government channels over public access.
We're in court with them. And my hope is that we can set a precedent here that AT&T, you have to go on an analog channel. You have to be channel 35, for government access. I don't know if we'll win or not. They'll put $1 million of lawyers in it at least, because what happens in LA will happen all around the country for AT&T.
And that was a point that Full Disclosure tried to drive home with the ITA committee. Over the last 3 months, as more and more media attention's been called to this issue of public access and PEG access channels, the entire nation is watching what's going to happen here in Los Angeles. Over half of the states across our nation have similar legislation as DIVCA, but LA is getting a chance, an opportunity to lead the way. So the committee did what most government committees do. They thanked the public for their comments and then went into closed session to try to figure out how to keep the franchise fees and mollify the public by appearing helpless in the face of the powerful telecom and cable companies.
Thank you very much. With that, that closes public comment for item number 5. We are now going to go into closed session. I apologize, everyone. We have to clear the room as a closed session. There only can be the members and the appropriate attorneys and staff to discuss the item in closed session. So everybody.
Okay, we're standing just outside the hearing room doors where a closed session is being held. The city attorney and the staff members from ITA and the ITA committee are discussing in private, in secret, what is going to be the fate of AT&T's PEG access program. There is a discrepancy between whether or not AT&T is complying with the DIVCA law that basically created this big mess in the city of Los Angeles right now and led to the demise of the public access channels. The mess in Los Angeles is being replicated in 20 states across America. As a response, some public access promoters are advocating federal legislation to stop the aggressive dismantling of public access by the telecoms. We'll show you what they're doing after this short break. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you. Weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and part 3 of our series on saving public access television stations in America. Ed Asner is offended by the way Los Angeles City Council has diverted funding intended by law to support public access and instead has stolen it for use in the city's general fund.
And I think it's shocking and symptomatic of the evisceration, erosion, evaporation of independent free speech and thought by having this the public access in Los Angeles anyway, wither on the vine by the city's refusal to take money which has been given by franchise and by contract, and keeping it for its own needs. And I'm sure that in these times the city needs all the money it can get, but it's been doing this for 25 years and has not been forthcoming with these funds which were to go to public TV.
Councilman Rosendahl seems to be powerless to reroute the kidnapped funds and send them where they legally belong. We ask him, how can he justify the diversion of these funds, which by law are supposed to support public access?
Well, it's a good question, because some of us, like me, who happen now to be an elected official at this point in my life, strongly believe that that monies should be used for public government and educational access, no matter what. But if the political will isn't there, just on the basis of where I'm coming from, the city can legitimately say, well, we'll take the 1% for capital dollars, whatever that means. And that doesn't mean staff. It doesn't mean the actual video. And we'll somehow work it in. But it's unclear what that will really mean going forward.
And moving forward, we see that not only is this not an isolated incident, but individuals in other cities and other states are looking to us, because this is Los Angeles. And if we in Los Angeles are not able to preserve such a vital public asset, then those in other states and other smaller cities, they see a very dim future for them.
And so there has begun a national movement. Stephen Ray from Austin, Texas, identified where the fight to protect public access is going.
We know people at a national level that are working to try to change some federal legislation that would mean that the capital equipment monies that we know the cities will still continue to get can be used for operations. And that's really one of the main hiccups, I guess, if you will, with this new state law.
Well, right now we're focused on the legislation that's going through the House of Representatives. It's called the Community Access Preservation Act, sponsored by Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin. And rather than attempt to change the state law in California, as I referred to DIVCA, it's also in 20 other states around the country under different names, but it's all essentially the same legislation that was pushed through by AT&T.
Problem with trying to stop that state by state is that you have to fight all these battles state by state. If we can get Congress to tell the states, hey, public access is a public access federal law, you have to obey federal law. Leave public access alone.
Sadly, H.R. 3745, the Community Access Preservation Act, is languishing in Congress. Almost a year ago, on October 7, 2009, the bill was referred to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and hasn't been heard from since. But Councilman Rosendahl believes that passing a federal law is the only way to go.
If you put the pressure on Washington, that's where eventually it was going to go anyhow, because when the phone companies were able to co-opt Sacramento, that was just their first step. They don't want to go to all 50 states and go through that. They just want a federal law that gives them blanket approval to do whatever the heck they want. And that's the direction the industry is going, okay? And that's the same reason why this consumer bill, basically from this congresswoman from Wisconsin that you mentioned, she's attempting to protect public access.
So it's a national problem. It's something that Congress can solve by telling all the states, this is a federal law, hands off public access, it's for the public, it's for educational institutions, and it's for government channels.
But the bill isn't the magic talisman that will stop the cable and telecom boogeymen. Some folks are fearful about giving more power to the federal government. They cite the problem here in California, where things were working fairly well until the state took away the power from the local cities and passed a statewide law. As one person wrote, to discourage the movement toward a federal law, people who reside in states and are dissatisfied with the actions of their legislatures should work to change the law rather than attempting to club us all over the head with one-size-fits-all nationalized requirement. End of quote. Whatever path that needs to be taken, we need to keep pushing this issue.
We need public access. Whatever you have to do it to make sure that public access is here for the people. There's so many people who have dreams, who have a reality that they want to make, they have things that they want to make a reality, like myself. And when they come to public access, they can do it. But without public access, there's so many opportunities for our people that would be missed. So please, whatever you have to do, keep public access alive for the people of the United States of America. Our young people need it.
Art Poma spent 29 years of his life working in public access. He knows its value.
The important thing about public access, I think, is that it's got a whole different feel to it than live TV or things people put on YouTube. It's a combination of everything that you could see on television, and it's real people doing real things. So I'd like to see it come back. I think it's something that will come back, but I don't know how and I don't know when. And I hope I'm part of it when it does come back.
You know, if you listen to your constituents, or if you are a constituent creating pressure on your elected, you're making the democracy work.
We want public education and government access to offer a voice of the people, education and government information so necessary to a functioning democracy, and to permit all of our citizens to have access to the tools of communication so they can participate as knowledgeable citizens and express their constitutionally protected rights to speak freely in the United States of America.
We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Do you think that passing a federal law is the best way to restore and protect public access television? Please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and tell us what you think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us for Part 4, the final edition of this series, where we will show you what the people in Los Angeles are doing to restore their public channels. They've formed the Public Television Industry Corporation. That's coming up in the next edition of Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
Public access has been important for us. We've reached a lot of communities that we wouldn't have reached.
Public access television provides a whole range of benefits, especially outreach with information people aren't getting from the mainstream media. We'll show you what some folks are doing and how citizens everywhere must fight to preserve it. That's coming up next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this final edition of our four-part series on saving public access television in America. Elaine Alston knows firsthand how effective her public access program has been in her community.
I know that in the D.C. metropolitan area, that show, my show, Dreams, have reached over 300,000 people. I have gotten so many wonderful feedback about the show. So many parents have called. So many young people have talked to their grandparents and grandmothers about coming on the show. And it's really exciting. Dreams are becoming a reality for our young people.
Steve Krieger, who worked for years in the public access television studio, knows that public benefit programs were the norm in his daily job.
We had many shows like that. Off the top of my head, I can think of, for example, Heal the Bay may come in and do a lot of things about keeping the ocean waters right here in Santa Monica and along the coast here in LA clean and pollution-free. And people that were committed to, many things that affected the local community.
Producer James Cavendish appreciates the resource public access provides him as a political forum to refute differing ideologies.
The public access gives me the ability here to express that view without the worry of political correctness or you gonna offend someone.
Vin DeBona, the creator and executive producer of America's Funniest Home Videos, rebuts the claim that the internet can fill the vacuum left by the demise of public access television.
The issue that some of the cable companies are stating is that, well, now there's a lot of access on the web. And someone said that there's a big difference between channel surfing and stopping and being glued to what's being said and being enticed to watch that, rather than going on the web and just zipping through files and URLs and everything. You don't stop. You tend to stay for a fraction of a second, but usually the information is short. The beauty of public access is that the information is extensive, and I think that's what the importance is here.
Some of the arguments are that, well, we have the internet now, we have this, that, and the other thing. There's different alternatives for people to get their message out. Nothing beats television. People know that. I mean, internet maybe reaches around the world, but it's not community oriented. It's not, here's my neighborhood, here's what's happening here. That's what public access is.
Ron Cooper, the executive director of Access Sacramento, explains how the internet cannot possibly provide the community service that public access television provides.
YouTube is fine if you have all the resources and training and you post your video in a place that maybe some people will see it. To have 250,000 Sacramento County households connected to these channels, regular promotion of their programs, regular support for the production of your programs and the training of your crew on an ongoing basis is a significant and much needed support mechanism.
And then the former ACLU board member, Stanley Scheinbaum, identifies the risk of losing public access television.
Because if the public access channels are not available to keeping the arms, so to speak, on government, the government has very little pressure on them to perform as governments should.
And in fact, producer Bill Schickler gives an example of how public access can put an arm on the government.
So we went out to the intersection of Northeast Washington and Southeast Washington. And there was an abandoned school out there. It had been abandoned for about 30 years. You could look through the windows and the doors were all knocked out. There's grass growing up in the middle of the schools, and just a big gigantic, it looked like Dresden after the bombings. Broken down appliances, refrigerators, trash, big piles of rubble. And we went there, and while we were taping, some neighbors dropped by and said, "What are you doing?" We said, "We're showing what the control board," which is an entity that was created by the Republicans, took over the D.C. government. This is how they're treating the city. So they said, "Well, we support anything you do because it's been like this for 30 years." So we took pictures of the school and we put it at the beginning of our program and at the end of the program. And it was just a minute clip, and we said, "Thanks a lot, Control Board. You're doing a great job with our city." 6 months after those openings aired, I went back to that area. The whole place had been bulldozed clean, and a park planted with trees and bushes and flowers had been put in its place after having sat there for 30 years.
Los Angeles City Councilman Bill Rosendahl knows that public access television provides an important public service.
I don't care if it's a guy parking my car or the big shot in some situation. People would watch it because they want to be informed. They want to be educated. They want to connect themselves to the world they're in. I think there's a crying need out there for real substantive public affairs programming, which unfortunately doesn't exist. Even in Washington, they have these talking heads or these different channels with their talking heads. That's not the same, where you have alleged commentators or opinion makers who don't know anything anyhow, but they act like they do, and the public looks at them as if they're important people. Baloney.
Plus, having this form of doing my show, I have the platform here. I have the floor. I can talk without being interrupted. I don't have to take phone calls if I don't want to. And sometimes I have told the call screeners that we're not going to take them because I have a lot to say. But I can say it, and I do believe that we have the audience behind us.
Businessman Rob Ransom explained the positive effect public access had on him.
I was asked to be interviewed by a show called Dreams in regards to kids and influencing kids in the neighborhood and dealing with kids from a community perspective. And then the show Dreams focused on how, as business leaders or people in the community, were able to help kids realize their dreams.
Realizing their dreams is the mission of public access producer Ms. Alston.
And I've talked to a lot of young people who at one time thought about dropping out, giving up, dropping out of school, but since they saw the show, they said, "Wow, I can stay in school. I can go forth and be a teacher. I can be a doctor. There's so many wonderful things that I can do, so I'm going to just hang on in there."
We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll see how right now public access television is being dismantled across the country and how citizens are joining forces to resist the attacks and restore the channels that have been lost. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in our Part 4 of our series on saving public access television in America. David Hernandez serves as the Vice President of the newly formed Public Television Industry Corporation that was created specifically to restore the lost public access television stations and channels in Los Angeles. He understands why politicians aren't working to restore public access.
With everything that is going on within the mantle of city governance is hidden or protected by silencing the voice of the independent public producer.
Stanley Scheinbaum, a founding member of the board of directors of the new organization, succinctly states the most important purpose of public access television.
Public access is a way of making democracy effective by keeping the public aware of what the limitations are when people with other interests resist what public access wants to do.
And so now, with more and more of the irregularities, like I said, not only with the courts, but elected officials, city managers, now more than ever, the demand for free speech, independent producers, and the vehicle in order for them to be able to broadcast are more relevant and poignant than ever.
Patsy Robles has been fighting her city council in San Antonio, Texas, with little to show for her efforts.
So basically, we don't have a studio. We have been lobbying the city council every year that we want a studio like what we had. Our estimate has been to build a studio or take an existing building that the city may already own and convert it into a studio would cost in the area of $10 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but the 1% franchise that is being collected on a perpetual basis by quarter is at least $450,000 a quarter and maybe as much as $500,000 a quarter. The city will not tell us, has not been willing to tell us how much money they're receiving each quarter towards PEG, nor have they told us or want to tell us how they have been spending the money.
Producer Robert Sharetta wants citizens to get more involved in the struggle to provide and maintain public access television.
So I think it's very important for people who really complain, oh, there aren't enough alternative voices out there, there's only, talk radio on the right or liberal, media on the left. If you really are serious about complaining about that issue, you want to see as many public access voices as possible, and especially young, I shouldn't just say young as well as medium and older age individuals coming forth with ideas of their own. Public access provides that. It's vital that we keep it alive.
He challenges more people to get involved with public access to assure that politicians aren't taking advantage of the public.
We need more producers willing to put their guts on the line and uncover a lot of the problems that occur. What you have in a case like Time Warner closing down those stations in California, Time Warner and the local governments work hand in hand too closely together, and you have to wonder, are they shutting down voices of dissent that criticize what the media companies are up to, that criticize what the local governments are up to? I worry that when we're seeing closures of public access stations, it's really just another effort, especially by local governments, to shut down dissent and criticism of what they're doing and what their activities are.
We organized, I say we, it's the producers in San Antonio, and we headed down to City Hall to city council meetings and lobbied, and it took about 7 months, and the channel that we had was put back on the air in July of 2006. So about 7 months passed, actually about 7.5 months passed before the channel was placed back on the air.
So citizens can have an effect. Public access television has the power to motivate, activate, and inspire.
I don't think that it should be interfered with because it is a medium in which the ordinary person can express their viewpoint. And one of the foundations in which our country was built was that freedom of speech. That's why you have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, at the top. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. Not everybody, if you limit it to just the commercial and high-priced medium outlet, the ordinary person couldn't get their views out. And you're going to have people that would dominate that media. Well, they can't with the public access.
The issue for people to rally around is money. There are big fees being paid by the cable and telecom companies, specifically to the cities, to underwrite public access television. But the city officials are stubbornly resisting allowing that money that is being held in a public trust fund to be applied to its lawful intended use.
I do feel that the money that's being received perpetually by the city every quarter, you know, based on the franchise fees collected from the cable customers, should be used equitably across the board, maybe divided up according to how many hours of programming there are, and that's not what is happening right now. And every year we're having to have the same battle to try to get the city to agree to go ahead and get started, build a studio, and the pushback that we get is that, well, there's no operating funds because the state cable franchising bill does not provide for operating funds. The city has to do that. So it becomes a big political battle.
We know that in Los Angeles, that is a very strong effort in order to divert the funds that has been paid by the public to operate the city's own propaganda channel.
So since that time, we have been lobbying the city council. You know, we have done publicity, we have done interviews. I've been interviewed by reporters, you know, all across the country about the issue. We organized, we have formed a nonprofit. We've presented proposals to the city council, and we hit a brick wall every time. The response is always, there are no operating funds to fund this, and that's their response.
Providing public access television is good business, as Mr. Ransom points out. Community organizations need the free public access to highlight their efforts on behalf of residents.
From a community's perspective, I think there ought to be some channels that are left available so that the community can get exposure for the things that it's doing.
Emmy Award-winning actor Ed Asner is also a founding board member of the new organization, and he's dedicated to the effort to restoring public access television.
Hopefully what we're doing here and what others have done for you will serve to alert these people who may be asleep at the switch. Most of the people I run into aren't even aware of this battle that's going on.
And so that becomes our job to make every American aware of what's at stake here, that we are losing a necessary public asset that is invaluable for all citizens. We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll show you the antidote to the recalcitrant City Council and all-powerful telecom and cable companies. LA citizens have banded together to form the Public Television Industry Corporation. We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you. Weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and the final edition of our four-part series on saving public access television in America. For decades, Ron Kay was the editor of the Los Angeles Daily News. He knows LA politics inside and out, and he explained what he sees as the future of public access television in LA.
Well, the future right now is pretty grim. The system has closed down and slammed the door in everybody's face. We've had a great community of coming together through your great efforts and the efforts of people across the political spectrum to form a nonprofit corporation that would bring together the voices of the city, of the people, and open up the doors and windows for an honest public discussion of the important public issues of our day.
Former public access producer David Hernandez, who is a founding board member of the new organization, is serving as vice president of the Public Television Industry Corporation. He explained why Los Angeles citizens formed PTIC, as it's known.
Especially here in Los Angeles, which is supposedly the television and movie industry capital of the world, for us not to have public television, it really created the need to have an organization that would work on behalf of producers, that would be able to present a more consolidated voice to elected officials, and to be able to transfer public television back to where it rightfully belongs, to the public.
Chief Investment Officer Scott Meinard of Guggenheim Partners volunteered to serve as chairman of the Board of Advisors to help guide PTEC in its effort to restore public access television in Los Angeles.
Well, I'm honored to be the chairman of the Board of Advisors for the Public Television Industry Corporation. And the need for this at this time, Leslie, cannot be understated. With the lack of access by the free television networks which were available to the city of California, we've lost a vital part of free speech to the citizens of California and to Los Angeles and throughout the country.
The mission of Public Television Industry Corporation is very clear. It's to restore the channels that we have lost. Those channels belong to the public.
I think the vehicle for it is this nonprofit corporation, the Public Television Corporation, and that we can, with any kind of support, bring television and open it up to neighborhood councils, homeowner groups, activists of all sorts, the people who are involved in the community, to tell the story that the officials don't want them to know.
Is that why the city officials are so inept in their efforts to restore public access? Could it be that they don't want citizens to have a better ability to publicize grievances?
Not only does PTEC is important in addressing programming and availability and studios and things like that, but there's also the political watchdog aspect of PTEC that is very important.
This is the media capital of the world. And as you know, the voice of the people needs to be heard. And this is a core American right, to have the ability for the public to have access to free speech. And to have this access cut off as a resource for the American people is to denigrate American democracy.
The critical problem really is the complete loss of credibility of our government institutions. The mayor, the city council, the county supervisors, nobody trusts them. And nobody trusts them because their decisions and actions make no sense. They don't jibe with what little information we do have. And if there was a healthier public conversation, which is what you've been working on, I've been working on, thousands of people are working on this, and it's gaining momentum.
As it is with each of the cities where public access television is being threatened, the issue is funding. Mr. Hernandez points out that there shouldn't be an issue of funding. The revenue streams are already there.
What we are talking about is 1% of the revenue. And 1% of the revenue equals millions and millions of dollars. That's why there is so much at stake. The city of Los Angeles, I believe, has probably received about $3 million already from the cable providers as part of that 1%. In a tight economy that, like we have now, that is only going to get worse, they're not going to give that up willingly to provide access for the citizenry to create shows that are critical of their performance.
Ron Kay agrees. The government officials, while blaming state law and wringing their hands and looking helpless, are circling the wagons to protect themselves.
What we're seeing really in government is a closing of the doors, and not just on television, but on documents, on records. We live in the 21st century where everything could be put up, and yet we're getting less and less, more difficulty getting Public Records Act requests answered, particularly from agencies like the DWP. There is an incredible amount of knowledge that's grown from community involvement over the last 10 or 15 years in Los Angeles, where thousands of people have been participating, getting involved, searching records. And we sort of have a crude system on the internet of emails and blogs that are providing it. The mainstream media is weak, diminished, demoralized, and incapable of doing the job. It really takes the public, and I think television is a critical aspect of that, to be able to create the kind of conversation and dialogue that'll lead to better decisions and a better informed public.
Mr. Hernandez explains how PTIC has been quietly working with the city officials to get the funding to go where the DIVCA law says it's supposed to go, public access television. He realizes that being quiet and polite isn't getting the job done.
We have worked with them, we have been very cordial, we have had meetings with them. But it is very apparent that that has all fallen on deaf ears because their objective is not to restore what was in place, but to gain access to yet another funding stream to serve their own needs.
What I've learned from my own activism is that people who have a monopoly on power will never share it. You have to take it away from them. That it's going to have to be people really organizing, really fighting, and being able to hurt the politicians or help them if they choose to be supportive and stop double talking and stop obfuscating and stop blocking the public out in ways that are destructive to the whole community.
PTIC Chairman Scott Minard sees this as a critically important mission for all Americans.
Without free speech, we have no hope of having our democracy survive in the long term. And so I think this mission to restore the access to direct access television here in Los Angeles and to assure the freedom of direct access television throughout the United States is the very bedrock and foundation of maintaining our democracy and the freedom of our citizens.
The freedom of our citizens has been jeopardized by the failure of traditional media. We must have some way to communicate our concerns to our fellow citizens. Public access television does just that. The time has come for the American people in their communities to step forward and save our public channels. Here in Los Angeles, we are engaged in an epic battle against powerful forces who fully intended to take away and repress our voice. But we can overcome them, and we are more than willing to fight them. The future of public debate regarding government policy and the freedom of expression and community spirit will be preserved on the public access cable channels, our most valuable asset. If you want to volunteer or to help financially to support this effort, please call our toll-free number at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your comments there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. I'm Leslie Dutton. Please join us next time for another edition of Full Disclosure. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.
know, the guards that were around me in the sheriff's department were really pretty good guys. In fact, they were very much supportive of my position.
What happens when you accuse an LA Superior Court judge of taking illegal payments? You go to jail with no trial and no sentence, potentially for the rest of your life. But in spite of everything Judge David Yaffe threw at him, Dr. Richard I. Fine won his freedom. You'll hear this extraordinary tale of struggle, survival, and eventual victory next on Full Disclosure.
Relentless, probing, fearless. This is Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure with Leslie Dutton, bringing you the truth by revealing the news behind the news.
Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're bringing you the news behind the news in this part one of our two-part home interview with Dr. Richard I. Fine. Because he confronted Los Angeles Superior Court Judge David Yaffe and refused to back down on principle, Dr. Fine suffered the last 18 months of his life in the Los Angeles County Men's Central Jail in solitary coercive confinement. We asked him how he was treated by his jailers.
The actual deputies themselves that I interacted with were very, very good. I mean, there's a definite split that occurs between Judge Yaffe and the actual deputies. In fact, the deputies that I interacted with were very much on my side. I had officers coming up to the cell and saying, "We're with you and congratulations on what you're doing. We really think what you're doing is correct." That happened a number of times and really didn't have any problems with the deputies. I mean, we had things that, in a way, were somewhat humorous because Yaffe evidently did something to order what we called sergeant protection. So that meant in the beginning, when I was first in there, everywhere that I went, I was handcuffed, I had a sergeant, 2 deputies, and a video camera watching, all my moves when they would move me from one place to the other. Well, after I think a couple of months of this, or maybe not even that long, everyone decided this is sort of ridiculous because every time this guy has to move from one place to another, we have to get half the staff out in order just to move him. So that stopped after a while.
Dr. Fine had been a practicing lawyer for over 43 years. He was fully prepared to fight for his freedom in pro per, as it is called, representing himself. But apparently Judge Yaffe made sure he was denied anything and everything he needed to even begin filing legal documents.
I had to fight for the in pro per status. Even though I was in pro per on my papers and everything else, the jail did not give me in pro per status. And evidently, they said that it had to come from the judge. So it appeared that Yaffe was doing everything possible to block my being able to fight the case. And so for a long time, I did not have in pro per status, and I didn't have access to what they called the law library.
Apparently what the county jail calls the law library isn't much of a law library.
The law library is a cage with a telephone and a computer that does not have any internet access, and it's hooked up to various discs. And the discs will tell you all the Supreme Court cases, it'll tell you other things, and there's a handbook on how to do a writ of habeas corpus. But there's no mechanism under which you can track cases or find out, from one case to another case what is being said. So if you wanted to track what was happening in a habeas corpus proceeding, you wouldn't be able to do it. From my point of view as a practicing lawyer for over 43 years, the law library was worthless. I mean, I went there twice. I determined what it was worth, and I never bothered to waste my time at it again because you couldn't use it. And any person who really would think that they could go in there and be an in pro per in the jail and really use that law library, as they call it, to go in and prepare a case, they're kidding themselves. You just can't do it.
Finally, even the jail staff became sympathetic to Dr. Fine's plight.
The individual deputies and the individual people were actually, very, very nice. Guards would come up to me and I'm reading about you on full disclosure, or I'm reading about you on the net, or something else in this order. So this was, I can't say it was a big thing, but it was a pretty well-known thing, that I was in there and people were following it. In fact, the first pencil that I got was given to me by, I believe, either the captain or the lieutenant. When he heard that I had been deprived of pencils and paper and everything, he actually gave me the pencil. He reached in his pocket and said, "This is ridiculous. Here, have a pencil, for God's sakes."
Armed with pencil and paper, Dr. Fine began mobilizing his resources.
We made some phone calls, and we ended up having what we call runners. That's what they call them in the jail. I may use some jail terminology. I learned a whole new vocabulary in the last 18 months. But the people that actually help you file your papers are called runners. So you can get what is known as an attorney visit by either an attorney representing you, if you have an attorney, or by your runner. And so what we were able to arrange, thanks to one of the captains, is that we were able to arrange to have 3 people be designated as runners. And those people would come into the attorney window. And any piece of paper that I produced in my cell, I would give out through the attorney window to them, then they would take it out for typing. And if anything came in, it would come in through the attorney window. So that's what really helped me out. And that's the way I was able to function. Without that, I would have actually had to have gone in and taken all of my handwritten papers and sent them out in the mail through the jail.
Did you have a computer that you could type these up on and then give them to the runners?
No, I had nothing. I had a 3-inch number 2 pencil and a legal pad. So everything that I did was written with these 3-inch pencils. And the reason that the pencils were only 3 inches is because the jail felt that if the pencil was longer than that, it could be used as a weapon, commonly known as a shank, so that you could stick it in somebody, and hopefully kill them. So therefore, all pencils were limited to 3 inches. And then I had my pad. My cell did not have a desk in it or a chair. It had a double bunk bed. So I did all of my writing standing up and writing on the top bunk. At times I thought of an analogy, but it really doesn't play out, but it's somewhat true. Winston Churchill did all of his writing standing up, and he had a lectern that he used to write on. The analogy existed as I had a double bunk, and I did all of my writing standing up with the 3-inch pencil.
Dr. Fine was able to keep a positive attitude, not only about his plight and his meager resources, but also about his dilapidated environment.
And because the building was so old, parts of the building would freeze, and the other parts of the building were overly heated. My cell had a very good location. I had a double bunk and everything else. So I elected to live through the freezing and the normal rather than moving the cell, because the other offerings were the cell on the other side of me, the toilet kept breaking, and on one side of me, on the other side, it kept overflowing. So my cell was pretty good as far as that was concerned. I was basically in good shape.
We're going to take a quick break right now, and when we come back, Dr. Fine will describe how he turned adversity into victory. It's an inspiring story you won't want to miss. We'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure in our interview with Dr. Richard I. Fine, who was recently released after having been incarcerated in solitary coercive confinement for the past 18 months in the Los Angeles County Central Men's Jail. He had a humorous perspective on the jail attire.
In the beginning, I was supposed to be in a red outfit because I was contempt of court, but they didn't have any red outfits. So they had me in an orange outfit, and I remained in the orange outfit for, I'd say, approximately 16 months. And then suddenly they brought up some gang people who were breaking gang injunctions, so they found some red outfits, so I went from orange to red. My feeling is I suddenly became déclassé because the orange outfit were the high-class felons. And so there were the murderers, attempted murderers, dope dealers, and everything else. So it's pretty classy in an orange outfit in the jail. Red outfit, you're just a contempt of court person unless you're a gang member that's broken a gang injunction. And you take a look at me, I'm not looking like your typical gang member unless you have the gang members of the over 65 guys. So I might have lost some status.
Over the hill gang.
The over the hill gang, yeah.
His entire life for 18 months was confined to a small windowless concrete box.
Basically, my cell had a sink in it and it had a commode in it. So everything that was done in the cell. So I was able to brush my teeth and everything whenever I wanted to.
Did you have a chair or a desk?
No. In my beginning cell, when I first came in, I was in a cell for a night or so, and then they decided, and this had to have been a Yaffe move, they decided that they're going to put me in suicide watch. Now, there was nothing suicidal about me. I think it was just a harassing move. So at that point, I went into a different cell where there, all of your clothing is removed and you have only sort of a very, very heavy tunic. The thing is like made out of lead. And you wear that, and I was in there for a couple of weeks, no shower, no nothing, no utensils to eat, small cell, maybe 6.5 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet high. It had a little window in it. And I didn't have a shower there for 2.5 weeks. Finally, they decided that obviously I was not a suicide risk. So I was out of there, and then I came in to the next cell, and the next cell had, actually the next cell had a desk and a chair in it. They were connected together, and it had a bunk and everything. And I was in that cell for maybe a couple of weeks or so, and then they decided to, but that cell didn't have a telephone in it. So then they shifted me to the final cell that I was in that didn't have a desk or a chair, but it did have a telephone. And believe me, I was very willing to sacrifice the desk or the chair for the telephone, because having the telephone was something that allowed me to communicate with the outside and to get the briefs done and everything else. Otherwise, I would only be allowed to use the telephone for maybe an hour a day or something else in this order. I would have never been able to have written my briefs or have been able to done the petitions or anything else. And there were only 3 or 4 cells on the row of cells that I was in that actually had telephones in them. But then the telephone broke a number of times and the lines were bad and everything else. I mean, they called the telephone people 3 times, I think, to fix my phone. So we had all of those problems with the phones.
And so, without a proper library, no internet access to identify legal precedents or similar court decisions, the most important legal resource he had to fight his case was his own memory. How did you know where to start?
Well, the starting point is 43 years of experience. The second thing is that each petition or each motion has certain things that are important to it. And if you know what has to go into the petition, you know the basic outline.
And so Dr. Fine had the legal knowledge to frame the case, but the legwork had to be done by others. He was extremely impressed and thankful for the many people who came to his aid.
I had a tremendous team that was working with me. I mean, and this is just unbelievable because people came into my life that I hadn't seen for years. Particular, Marty Mason, who was my office manager back in the 1970s and 1980s. I think, she's now lives down in Georgia. She contacted us, and Marty became the leader of the research group, and also runs their website, freerichardfine.com. So, if I needed a case researched, or if we had to find out what happened to a case or something else in this order, Marty would be able to take care of that. The typing and everything, I would construct everything on the piece of paper, do the outline, lay it all out, and then it would go out to the runners. Now these people, runners is really it's a misnomer, because I mean these people are like executives, and we had Fred Sotilli, Dennis Etlin, Jeanette Isaacs. In the beginning, we had Greg McPhee. These were the people that were coming in and taking the papers. They would then either scan the documents and send them down to Marty, who would then end up putting them into the correct form and then sending them back to Los Angeles, and then these people would actually file the documents. So this team was there, and any time that that I needed something done, this team was right there getting everything done. So in a sense, what we had is you had a man in a 7.5 foot by 13 foot by 8 foot high jail cell with a 3-inch pencil and a pad, a group of people that were able to get the papers and get papers into me. Then the papers were typed or emailed across the country, then back into Los Angeles for filing. And when we had to file in the U.S. Supreme Court, they were filed in the U.S. Supreme Court by whatever mechanisms that we were using. When we had to file in the Ninth Circuit, they were sent up to the Ninth Circuit, by mail. All of this was done. I mean, this team could literally, they can accomplish anything. I mean, if the government ran as smoothly as my team worked, we wouldn't have problems in the United States today.
Well,
and they're an all-volunteer team. If you had to have paid them, being a lawyer and knowing what we produced over this period of time, my estimated cost to have had an outside attorney do this work would probably be $2 to $2.5 million. Just to file in the United States Supreme Court is $200. To get the briefs printed, it's going to cost you another $500 to $600. I mean, so there you have those types of costs. Your mailing costs $100 a shot. I mean, it's you had a lot of these costs that are involved. I mean, the system is really set up in a sense that if you're going to be in there fighting something on the system, it's set up to go against you because it can starve you out.
We'll be right back.
For the news behind the news, wherever and whenever you want it, go to fulldisclosure.net and get programs on topics affecting you. Weekly updates and alerts on hot topics, video streaming of Full Disclosure episodes. It's award-winning, hard-hitting, corruption-fighting news coverage. And it's only available at fulldisclosure.net. Fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure and our interview with the recently released Dr. Richard I. Fine. As a noted attorney, Dr. Fine had a significant reputation as a litigator. You would think that when he was attacked by the state bar and Judge Yaffe, that other attorneys would come to his aid. Apparently, when you accuse the legal system of corruption, you do so all alone. No attorney would represent him.
I had one person in the beginning, Dave Naftalin, who's an attorney, but he didn't act in the capacity of an attorney. He really, in the very first petition, he acted as the writing person to just make sure that everything was in proper form. I actually did all of the dictating and everything else because he was not, he didn't have any knowledge in criminal law or anything else on this order. There was no attorney, and we looked into a number of people. There was no attorney that was really willing to take this case on.
How about the American Civil Liberties Union? They have an ongoing contract with the Los Angeles County Sheriff. and are handsomely paid as jail monitors. Apparently, attorneys jailed in retribution for identifying corruption in the LA court doesn't fit within their criteria of protecting civil liberties.
The ACLU told us that they didn't have the resources to take the case on. And I found this very interesting because the ACLU has the resources to challenge the cross on the LA County's stationery or on their seal. But to take on the issue of the basic issue of the constitutional rights in our judicial system, there they don't have the resources. So I mean, and there was no other attorney who was willing to take the case on.
After serving 18 months in jail, we had to ask the most glaring question. Why did you do it?
Why? Well, I think I had time to contemplate this. I'll say initially, let me come at that in an oblique way. When I first did it, I knew all the law was on my side. I did not anticipate that I was going to be in jail for 18 months. And the reason for that is that it was unheard of for anyone to be in jail for more than 5 days. So in my calculations of looking at this, I figured that I probably would be in jail for maybe 5 days, because the Civil Code of Civil Procedure said that it's 5 days is contempt of court, and that's going to be about it. So that was, I misjudged on that one. I readily admit I did not realize that the hatred of the judges who were getting the criminal payoffs was so great that they were going to do everything possible to keep me in here, and that the other parts of the judiciary was going to try and cover these payments up.
Because of his background as a corruption fighter, Dr. Fine felt he was uniquely qualified to take on the California judicial system, and that fact almost demanded that he and he alone stand up and defy the court.
My history was different than any other lawyer in the system, and that's a unique thing to say, because one will say, how can this person sit in front of us and say that he's different than all 208,000 lawyers? But it happens to be true, because I had a background of, prior to coming into this suit, that starting from about 1993 onwards, between 1993 and I think it was probably 1993 through about 1997, or even into maybe 1998, I filed cases against the state government, county governments, and city governments for illegally taking money out of trust funds and special funds, or to stop them from illegally putting on assessments, or not taxes because you need votes for taxes, but other fees.
Fully knowing what was about to happen, Dr. Fine stood up in front of Superior Court Judge David Yaffe and accused him of taking illegal payments. He stood there in respectful defiance, refusing to back down on principle.
I did it because of the fact that it was the right thing to do. And it's as really as simple as that. You know, we live in a country where we have a rule of law, and the rule of law basically says that a judge doesn't take a payoff. A judge doesn't take a bribe. And here we had not only Judge Yaffe, I mean, he's the face on this, but he represents 90% of the judges in California. And I backed that figure up by a study that came out, I think it came out in 2008 or 2009, by the Administrative Office of the Courts of California that did the study. And they said 90% of these judges were getting this money. So consequently, we had a system that had gone awry. There was no way in the system that somebody was going to get a fair trial.
This principled stand cost him more than a year of his life, solitary coercive confinement, alone in a cold concrete cell, knowing that dangerous felons are released after serving only half their sentence. He was jailed, never having been charged or convicted, potentially forever. There was no end in sight, ever. Never seeing the sun, never breathing fresh air. How was he able to maintain his principled stand for so long, we asked him.
The only way that one survives in a situation where you do not have any control over your life, and you're in a situation that somebody can come down and do something on you against you at will, is to adopt an attitude that you're going to make it through. And in adopting that attitude, I also adopted the attitude that there is nothing that is going to get me aggravated. Because if you let things get to you, you'll go crazy. You will go totally and completely berserk. Because remember, I'm in a room that is 7.5 feet wide, 13 feet long from the door to the wall, but the basic room, by the time you take away the facilities for the sink and the toilet, is really down to 8 feet long and maybe 8 feet high. White walls, no windows, lights are on 24 hours a day. No exercise. This was my life for 18 months.
He worked hard to maintain his physical and mental fortitude.
I tried to keep myself basically in good physical condition because of the fact without exercise or anything else, your condition deteriorates very, very quickly. And so the conditioning combined with the attitude that I was going to make it through, and a lot of the support that I was getting, from the outside and from letters that were coming in and comments that I was hearing and everything, that really brought me through it also.
And so he survived, and now he's out. We want to know what you, the viewers, think. Do you think that he should continue his fight against the widespread cancer of corruption in our justice system? Or is it a battle that cannot be won? Please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number and let us know what you think at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777. And if you leave your name and number, we'll get back to you. Or you can log on to our website at fulldisclosure.net and leave your opinion there. And if you leave your email address, we'll be happy to respond. Please join us in the next edition of the Full Disclosure, where Dr. Fine will explain what he thinks we need to do to put justice back into our justice system. That's coming up in the next edition of Full Disclosure. I'm Leslie Dutton. Thank you.
To respond to this question or comment on this program, please call 800-867-7777 or visit fulldisclosure.net. Transcripts or DVD copies of this program are also available on our website. Full Disclosure, the news behind the news.